Hello and welcome to the Social Recruiting Show. I'm Katrina Collier. I am, of course, author of the Robot Proof Recruiter, which I definitely don't plug too much, really, truly. And I'm a facilitator and speaker. I'm, of course, joined by my gorgeous co-host, the talented, oh my goodness, it must be Friday. talent acquisition professional, the one, the only, the amazing Glenn Martin. Hello,
Hola.
Glenn. Did you pull a face? I didn't notice.
Yeah. Well,
this week, we've got a bit of a hot topic this week with the fabulous Jen Tait, or
yes.
Jennifer as I was calling her until I got corrected. Jen Tait, who's going to battle our onboarding with us. We won't even go into pre-boarding.
Welcome,
that could
Jen.
be too much. Welcome to the Social Recruiting Show.
Welcome, Jen. Welcome indeed.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to it.
Do we warn her what we're about and how crazy we are, or we just let it go?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this one as well because I got a vested interest in this discussion. But before we get into that,
yes,
yeah, definitely. Before we get into that, obviously the holistic world of people, because Social Recruiting Show is more than just about recruitment. And you're an L&D professional. It'd be really interesting to just kind of learn a little bit more about your journey to where you are now. So over to you. Intro.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm trying to think where I even started now. Way back in the day, first ever job, I was a bit of a skater chick in my day, and I worked at a skateboard shop. I was a waitress in restaurants, you know, that kind of thing, all while I was at school. But my route into L&D, I used to work at Northern Rock, and I was on the phones. I was an agent on the phone selling mortgages. I used to do the twilight shift, which I absolutely loved. I used to go in, do 4 till 8, selling mortgages when I was at uni. So I'd do uni for the day, then go in to work. And actually thinking about that, I think the bit that I loved about that job wasn't so much the telephony and the selling of the mortgage. It wasn't the sales. It was the part where you explain to people how the mortgage works, and it was helping people to understand. So then when a job came up in training internally, I applied for it because that's the thing that always appealed to me. So I applied for that. That was my first ever job in L&D, and I absolutely loved it. I had brilliant managers, brilliant team around me, great opportunities. And that's how I entered into L&D. And then since then, I left in 2008 with the financial crash. I think a lot of people left at that point as well. Went to an insurance company, and it was like chalk and cheese. I think I was quite maybe a bit young and naive and thought everywhere will be like this and everyone's going to have a great team and we're like a big family. Whilst really confident, head high into this other company, and it was the complete polar opposite. So it just was not a good cultural fit, really, for me, let's say. So I thought, right, I've got 2 options. I can either leave and get another job somewhere, or I can leave and I think I'd do a better job of this myself, actually, just go self-employed and give it a go. So that was in 2010.
Yeah.
And I did, and I never looked back. Yeah. So that's what I did. Either way, I'm not staying here, so I'll give it a go.
That's amazing. I want to know more about that, but more, I've just had this moment of, wow, LinkedIn has changed something and we can now show comments from LinkedIn. Good morning, Mr. Stroud. And good morning, Nagam, who's also joining us live.
Morning, Jim.
Jim Stroud is very important to me. I won my company name off him. Very important. So yes, I'm glad he's here. Lovely man. So yeah, so it sounds like you actually plotted your career into learning and training, which is quite interesting. It's good you saw that in yourself. Like I did find that a lot of people don't see it. They don't.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are kind of accidental trainers and just fall into it. Mine was very much planned. So I did my CIPD qualification before I was even a trainer because I knew, so I had to fund it myself. Obviously work wasn't going to fund it when it wasn't anything to do with my role at the time, but I thought I want myself to be in the right position. So when the job comes up, I'm there. Yeah. So I did that, put myself through college, did that evening classes when I was an agent on the phones. So I was ready to then go into training. Yeah. And even back at school, I was on the debating team, the public speaking team. I like the
Good, we're having a debate there.
Should we say? The end product of our training, which is the delivery of the session. Yeah. You know, and a lot of people say to me after my sessions, they'll say like, oh, you know, you've really inspired me. Like, I want to be a trainer. How do I get into training? But the bit they don't see is, you know, lugging the laptop around London on the tube and the flip chart and trying to get to the site and all that kind of thing. They just see the end part. But I love all of it, to be fair.
You're not going to miss the tube.
I know.
I believe they're already quite packed. There's no way I'd get on the tube at the moment, which is dreadful. So you went self-employed in 2010. Did you have this is a problem I want to solve, this is a client area I want to be in? What was your plan, or did you not have a plan? You just went, it's a global recession, we're on the tail end, why not? Which is pretty well about the time I started training. So.
My plan, I was quite young when I went self-employed, actually. And my plan, I didn't do any client scoping. I didn't do any kind of business plan, anything. I just thought, I really want to do this, and I believe that I will be good at it. And that was enough, to be honest, at the time.
Intuition. That's a good thing. Following your intuition.
Oh, self-belief. Yeah. Take a leap. And actually, I think that just as there was 2008-9, because that's, to be fair, that you went off the back of that as well. There will be so many businesses launched off the back of this as well. That'll just go, pivot, bye, off. It'll be interesting times ahead. So how did we end up with the onboarding topic then? How did you go from L&D to focusing on that bit? Because should we actually shall we define it a bit? So recruiter does role to offer. Then there's this grey bit.
And Katrina's frozen. So I'll pick up on that one, Jen. And she's back. There we are.
Hello.
You left. We caught you where you were just like, recruiter does.
Perfect.
And that was it.
Question mark.
Recruiter does. Well, okay, let's like traditionally, back in the day, recruiter did to offer. Then there's the grey period. And then maybe the person starts and that's onboarding. I call pre-boarding the grey period, but how do you define it? Where do you think it starts? Like, let's get this debate going. And I hope we get lots of questions from you guys.
Yeah, I think onboarding starts from the moment you offer them the job. If not before, in some ways, really. It depends what we're talking. This is where we'll get into it, isn't it? So it depends what we're talking about, especially with talent acquisition. So I think, and bear in mind that I am the training side. I'm not the talent acquisition side, but my understanding would be that a good talent acquisition professional would do a kind of bit of strategy planning, and they might even be looking for talent that's available before a job's even there, before a job is even created, having a look strategically at what is the history of the attrition for this particular role in this particular industry for this client, succession management, that kind of thing, so that we can then get them ready to launch them into that role. So a bit like me, really, with my CIPD, get ready to be a trainer.
Wouldn't that be lovely if they had the crystal ball and the managers were actually there and they could actually resource plan? Wouldn't that be lovely? Glenn should answer that.
I was just going to say, so do we accept that kind of pre-boarding, onboarding, whatever we're calling it, it's orientating the candidate about the company. So that starts at the first conversation, does it not? In terms of kind of giving them a sense of the context of the company, whether it's about the role and how that role fits within the business, the culture, the environment. So actually, to Katrina's point, pre-boarding, onboarding, actually, what we're talking about here is a candidate journey where they start with a candidate, then they obviously transition into an employee. But it's regardless of what label you give them during that process, it's their journey from the point where you first talk to them all the way through to when they're sitting in the seat starting to do the job. And then it goes beyond that 12 months later.
Yeah. Exactly. I would definitely agree with that, Glenn. From the minute you offer them the job, right through to 12 months, even maybe 24 months down the line. So a lot of things that we do where, if we're going in to clients and they've brought us in to look at the induction part, but actually we often end up having to look at all of the pre-induction bits. The offer, even how the job is advertised. Is that the job? Why are you advertising with those words? Are you getting the right people in for us to then train?
Yeah. And then we do back at the intake.
Exactly. And then we do an end-to-end colleague kind of development journey. So right after induction, is it just bye, good luck in your new role? Or is it we're going to bring you back at this stage for this stage for this is your option to leadership, this is your option to an apprenticeship, this is what you can do, right through to the last day with the company where they might leave, but at least they're leaving with haven't been developed and with a good opinion of your brand to share with others.
We have a comment here, which is actually not anonymous. It's from Sidra Iqbal. I take it that Sidra isn't, if I'm not butchering your name, I don't think she's connected to me. That's why it says LinkedIn user. I think onboarding doesn't just sit with TA, but the hiring manager, HR ops as well, to make sure the new starters are aligned with what to expect on their first day when they join. Yeah, and beyond, all of it, everything that you've just said.
Yeah,
it is complicated. It's not great. It's not black and white, is it?
No. And equally, I think it depends on the size of the company. Jen, I don't know your thoughts on this, but on pre-boarding, onboarding a large-scale investment bank would be very different to that of a 20-person startup, right? Just purely on the basis of resources. So I think, you know, it's kind of when you can start to kind of Sidra's point around, you know, HR ops, TA, hiring manager. Well, actually, in some startups, I know the hiring manager is all of those things. It's just that person.
That's it. That's it, exactly.
And there is no time to onboard them anyway, because there's not enough staff. Just start.
I know. This is it. And I think regardless of the size of the company, regardless as to how many cross-functional teams this process touches along the way, there needs to be the 4 stages to onboarding, which is the pre-induction, some kind of trainer-led activity or manager-led, whoever it is doing that training, the chance to apply that learning in the job, and then that bit that I talked about, which is the post-induction, right to the end of the life cycle there of that employee at the company.
Yeah. Do you think we're, and I'm playing devil's advocate here, do you think we're overcomplicating it by segmenting it so much? So we segment it so that certain teams have ownership. Are we not overcomplicating that? Can that not be one team or one person's responsibility to a degree? You know, so actually what you could do is flip it in so much as one person almost takes responsibility for a particular intake of employees from the point where so if, you know, you hire a load of people in kind of Q1, that person then takes ownership for that cohort through their career in the company. I don't know, it's just an idea.
I think that would be easier in a smaller company, or if you're only recruiting a couple of people, maybe, depending on the number of employees that you're bringing in. I do think it is a complex process. And because it touches that many teams, I think the important thing to do at the start, whether there's holistic ownership, I think definitely what we need to do is assign clear roles and responsibilities for each part of it. So for instance, for the pre-induction, pre-boarding, whatever you want to call it, for that side of it, generally in companies, that's what recruitment own. However, L&D do have a huge role to play in that, because the social aspect of the learning starts before your L&D's involvement doesn't start on day one. You know, we can send out welcome videos. Hi, I'm going to be your trainer on day one. Really excited to meet you. Congratulations on getting the role. Few things you need to do before you join with us. Make sure you get your e-learning done. You know, send that out before. Don't waste the trainer's time standing around doing e-learning. We want to add value when we're there in the room with them. Make sure you do all your pre-employment paperwork, that kind of thing.
One thing I found writing the book was that the realization, because Glenn's heard me say this 1,000 times, as have several people in the side comments, you know, the transparency created by the internet. You know, you really do, as a recruiter, have to look after people through every single part, or you can't recruit. So I think it's almost like, okay, it mightn't be my responsibility, but as a recruiter, if I don't make sure L&D or HR or hiring manager or whoever's doing their job, it's going to make it difficult for me to recruit at some point. I think that's causing some of the complication. We have so many comments. I have to share some. Joanna Barker. Oh, sorry, I really missaid her name. For team responsibility, it's key to define when one starts and the other stops, which is what you just said, isn't it? But candidate journey, I see as encompassing attraction recruitment through to hire, and then even to the end of probation. I'd say even alumnus. Actually, on that, can we just thank our sponsor, Enterprise Alumni, who I've completely forgotten to thank. We could not do this show without them, so thank you, thank you. You led me into that so beautifully, Joanna. Debbie, hello, darling. HR and TA should be working in alignment with a shared voice that is consistent with the voice that the marketing developed brand, or just the company voice. Absolutely agree.
I agree completely with that.
I need a question.
Well, I was just going to say, on Joanna's point, whilst in principle I kind of understand, you know, the kind of assignment of kind of tasks and responsibilities, the start and stop piece kind of bothers me, because it implies that something has ended and then something else begins. But from a candidate to employee perspective, it should feel like a fluid journey, right?
Yeah.
And let's be fair, this, Jen, right? One of the things that you do to really ensure that people get the most out of your learning, you have to build a relationship with them. They have to trust you, right?
Yeah.
So how do you then, if something starts and stops, how are you handing over the trust?
Well, I mean, like you say, it needs to be a fluid journey. It kind of almost doesn't start and stop, because like I say, with L&D's involvement, the way I see it and the way I always work with clients as well is I will have involvement in that pre-induction stage before they join with us. So I'll have created video to send out. You can send out a virtual tour. The e-learning, that falls with L&D, doesn't it? However, you send that out beforehand if you can. Check with your compliance team if you're thinking of doing that first. But generally, if it's generic stuff, you can send that out, get that out of the way.
You don't want to send them too much. I guess you want to send them enough to keep them involved, but you don't want to send so much that they're going to sit down.
This is a great point. This is a great point there, Katrina. And I think this is what a lot of clients often say to me as well. And I think it depends on the level you're bringing in. So let's say you've got senior leadership starting. They will probably expect to have to do a little bit of work before they join the role, I would imagine. However, if it's kind of clerical level or telephony agent level, you might get, well, why should I bother doing all this e-learning when you're not even paying me yet? Like, no, I'm not going to do that. Yeah, no way. So what you can do,
I'm not going to watch some boring video now. Like, that truly not good. That is exactly what I would be thinking.
Exactly, and a lot of people do. So what we've done to get around that, because actually it's about the problem we're solving. We're not just doing it for fun. The problem we're solving here is that if you don't engage your new starters before day one, sometimes there can be a 3-6 month lag between offer and start date. If you don't engage them, guaranteed somebody else will, and they'll go there. So it is a way of doing that. But to get around that thing of why should I do all this e-learning before I start or read this policy or whatever it might be, some people say we estimate it'll take 2 hours and we'll pay you for those 2 hours at the end of your induction period. Stay with us for induction. Don't leave throughout like a lot of people do, and you'll get the money then. Or it could be we're going to give you a love to shop voucher or something, some kind of reward or payment for having done the work at the end of the induction.
I just thought, go on, Katrina.
Oh, no,
go
sorry.
for it.
Okay, well, Erin Peterson. Hello, Erin. I'm sure I was talking to you earlier for your fabulous podcast. Can't wait for that to come out. You've got to wait 2 weeks. We had a brilliant chat. Can't wait. Talk about asking curveball questions, Glenn. You need, oh my gosh, you two got on so well. Glenn always throws the curveball. Anyway, so awesome topic. Thank you. I think before they start, hires continue to look for reasons to believe they made the right decision by saying yes. Jen, have you got any examples of companies you think that are getting it right?
Yes, I have.
Obviously, all your clients.
I'm working with them at the moment. I don't know if the thing is, I would absolutely love to share that. I don't know if I'm kind of able. A lot of them are in financial services, I can say that. And I don't know if I'm okay to kind of share who I'm working with at the moment, company name wise.
Without saying who they are, explain why.
What they're doing. Yeah, that's fine.
Good, as opposed to average, for example. Does that help you get around the?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So
it's not Barclays. No kidding.
Wink, wink.
The only one that came to mind. It could be any of them.
So companies who are getting it right, basically, what with induction, what you want is to get these people competent, confident, and feel a sense of belonging, and they're not going to go, oh God, what have I done? Why have I left my job to come here? So I think that was the question, wasn't it? How do you make people feel like that? And I think some of the things I've mentioned, so the engagement up front, you can do even tiny little things, that sounds so trivial and easy. But, when you're asking them for, we need your address and we need your, all your information before you start, why not add a question on to say, also, what's your favorite chocolate bar? And then on day one, they come in, they've got their nameplate. Oh, here's me, Jen, and I've got a Mars bar there. Or, if you're doing it all remotely, which a lot of people are having to now for onboarding for induction, then what's your favorite pizza? Get it delivered. Or something. There's always a way that you can change it around.
I've got screenshots of those first day desks where like someone would share a photo of their desk when they arrived, which would have kit on it because it was companies that could afford like swag. But the retweets or the comments would be in their tens of thousands on those. This is the desk I walked into. Because, so often back in the day, you'd walk in and reception wouldn't even know who you were there, why you turned up. There was no security pass for a week. You wouldn't get a text for 2 weeks. So it's such a shock for people to have that chocolate bar on their desk. It is.
Yeah, well, and I know that's kind of it's an easy thing to do. The point being that it's it's making them feel as though you've took the time to understand them. You've said, hey, we've sent the video, we know what we're, and on that video as well, to help with that point, I wouldn't have it kind of CEO of the company level. What they want to see is, who am I going to see on day one? Who's my trainer? Who's my manager? What about a day in the life of an agent from someone who's already working there? That kind of level. That's what you're aiming for.
Yeah. I'm just throwing them out.
Okay, cool.
Keep talking because there's so many. I'm just going to throw.
I was going to say, when you get to Louise Shaw, that question looks good. Yeah, Jen, I was just kind of thinking, what was I thinking actually? Yeah, I was thinking something. I was thinking, and in terms of the questions around, what's your favorite chocolate bar, right? You accept that not everybody learns in the same way. Some people, audio, some people visual, that sort of thing, right? So kind of perhaps baking some of those questions into that kind of pre-screening, that initial conversation surely would be valuable, right? Because if I'm visual, right, or audio, and if you send me like a 20-page, kind of employee handbook, I ain't going to read it.
That's the same as me.
I'm just not going to read it. So do you advocate that kind? And if you do advocate that, how can you frame that without it feeling too invasive? Because if I just turn around to you and, okay, cool, what's your favorite chocolate bar? Oh, and how do you learn?
Yeah.
So how do you go about doing that? How would you?
But I take that with a pinch of salt, Glenn, to be honest. That the point around kind of, let's send out a Honey and Mumford learning styles questionnaire, tick these boxes, you are audio. I think the trick is to design your induction and your training with a blend anyway, so that they're all catered for, rather than trying to change it because you've got these people coming in and they're that and they're that. And they might have been audio that day when they've been answering the questionnaire, but actually they might be not have realised, but they're going to get a lot more out of a visual side. And also it depends on the topic that you're training. It might not be suited to that particular style anyway. So you just design it with
I will listen to a podcast, but I will want to read a book. But when I read the book, I'm probably reading it out loud in my head, but I want to actually physically hold it and read it. But I will happily listen to podcasts. It's really strange. But I'm quite high on the audit rate. I'm going to actually show the second part of Louise Shaw's comment, because the first part we'd answered at the beginning that actually it really varies at every company what onboarding is, but it's basically getting someone from candidate to successfully hired employee and out the other side even, for that matter. But Louise did ask this as well. It would be great to hear about how others are transitioning to virtual onboarding. It's going very well for some clients, incredible for some, how fast they've transitioned because they've had to, while others are still very fearful and delaying starters. Don't delay your starters. They'll be getting other job offers. No. Silly, get them in.
Yeah, exactly. And I think sorry, I didn't catch the lady's name who put that comment.
Louise Shaw. Sorry,
I think Louise has got a great point there about they've done it because they've had to. And was it what's Plato's quote? Necessity is the mother of invention. And that is so true now, especially, companies may have had longer term plans to, we're going to do, and especially L&D are guilty of this. L&D like to do it really well and right, let's get it perfect, and then we'll launch, then we'll do the course. We haven't got time for that now. So I think, you may have had longer term plans, and actually this has caught people off guard, and we're having to adapt and react and do it now. But definitely do it, because like Katrina said, if you don't, they'll be somewhere else. And there's loads of different ways that you can get it online.
Baffling me. Everyone's remote right now, so don't understand why Facebook's going, in 5 to 10 years, 40% of our workforce will be remote. You've seen they've come out and said that statement. I'm like, but your staff are already remote, right? You just leave them remote. Anyway, sorry, back to what you were saying. It was going through my head. I don't get that one.
Well, they've got a really polished video now, haven't they, Katrina? That's why they're doing it. They've got a really nice video. So exactly.
Exactly. That's a really interesting point, though.
I think now is the ideal time to go back to Louisa's comment. Now is the ideal time to look at what you've got do not just pick it up and dump it online. Yeah. What are the business problems that we need to solve? How can we use this opportunity? So if the problem is attrition, what can we do to solve that in this new way of designing it? You don't have to reinvent the whole wheel, but you do need to think carefully about your exercises you've got in there. You can't be doing, say, financial services, you've got a 5-week induction. You can't do a 5-week induction 9 to 5 every day online. That's insane. You're gonna have to chunk it up a bit. You're gonna have to be really, really critical with your objectives for exercises, use breakout rooms. There's loads of these things that people are doing at the moment.
This is actually Greg McCaw. I really wish it would say. So annoying. Agree with Jen. You're onto assessments. We can't keep putting people in boxes.
Yeah.
So true. And this one from Gary Burney, it seems to me Jen's talking about personalizing the onboarding. You can make each point more relevant and a more enjoyable experience and keep people hooked in and staying. Okay, what's this one? Debbie, curious how many have a policy of checking in 3 or 6 months later to see how the employees are settling in? Does onboarding expire on the start date? It better not if you want to keep them. But definitely what's your thoughts on that?
Tell us, Jen.
Yeah.
Tell us, Jen. You're the expert.
So checking in on them 3 or 6 months down the line after their training, after their induction piece. Yeah. So this is, for me, your induction, your route to competence is at least in line with your probationary period. So if you've got a 6-month probation period, you have got 6 months to prove your worth, hit your targets, whatever it may be in that company. So why would you only train them for month 1 of that? So you need to do, you might do, like I said before, 5-week induction. So that's in week 5, but then look at your company's common fail rates. What are their errors that they get through all the time? You know, I'm trying to kind of make this general so it applies to all companies. But what are the things they're tripping up on? Bring them back for that in month 2, back again in month 3, back again in month 4. So that's 3 refreshers. You can get the group back to get them go off onto different teams. Bring them back together. Do peer focus groups. What are your successes? What are your challenges? Any hints and tips? So there's that little sense of community all the way through.
It must admit, you're doing very much the learning bit of it, but I'm also thinking about I always knew going back exactly when my 3-month date was. And you wouldn't hear anything from the hiring manager or your manager. You'd hear nothing, and you'd be sitting there going, okay, so if I turn up tomorrow, does that mean I have my job? I mean, HR hasn't messaged me to say that I'm okay. Like, you'd hear nothing. But the employee knows exactly when the end of their probation is, always.
Oh, yeah.
Because they're sitting there going, oh, I'm going to go off 1 week notice onto 4, thank God. Like, you know, whatever they're going through their head. But
and they should have a plan, that a support plan that they're working to with their manager as well in this time to make sure that they are on. It shouldn't be that you don't hear anything till the day before.
Who keeps their manager to the plan? So that goes back to like who owns the onboarding and the pre-boarding and it's because it's not just the training bit. Like there's more to it, isn't there?
There is.
The business has a responsibility.
Who keeps the trainer to the plan? Who keeps the recruiter to the plan? Everyone's got their own roles and responsibilities that they need to be accountable for. Which is why I think, you know, where we don't have this. What were some of the stats? I was reading something the other day.
I know that like 33% of people decide in their first week if they're staying or not.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know that one. That's in the.
That was it. It was a quarter of people, well, almost a quarter, 24% of people after they leave. So talk about offboarding at the other side of it. After they leave, still have corporate access because they owns that.
I love that.
Yeah.
Oh, the fun one could have.
Oh yeah.
So I think.
Oh my God! Imagine if they've left badly. Oh, what you could get up to.
Risk involved, exactly. Yeah. And I think. Is a question, I suppose, is this because there is a lack of holistic ownership for the whole thing? And because it is fragmented over cross-functional teams?
So here comes my curveball question then, Katrina.
Dun, dun, dun.
Well, I don't know quite how it'll come out, but so I think we all collectively agree, right, that, you know, COVID has kind of disrupted companies and actually forced them into a way of working that they typically wouldn't have, you know, advocated, or they would have given an employee a little bit of flexibility working from home, that kind of stuff, right? So now the employee is aware of choice. They're aware that they can work at home full time. They can, you know, come into the office, et cetera, right? So what about keeping that in place for the employee, right? So choice in terms of how they work, choice in terms of how they are taught, L&D. So if they want it virtual, if they want it in person, if they want something purely audio, whether that works for 100% for the material or not. What's your thoughts about, the empowerment of the employee having more choice now? Is that a good thing, or do you think that?
Yeah, I think it is. I think that will rocket their learning, to be honest. If you've got a choice in how you learn, when you learn, where you learn, same as if you've got a choice in when, how you get the work done. For me, so for my company, with my guys that work with me, I just couldn't care less whether they're working after the kids are in bed, or whether it's, they might not be on at 9 o'clock. I'm rarely on at 9 o'clock in the morning. I've got kids as well. So, as long as they get that done by the date to a good standard, that's it. And I think that goes a long way. I do, however, accept the fact that, mine is a very, very small company, and we can be flexible like that. If you've got hundreds of agents on phones, or whatever it may be, you've got people out on sites all over the country, it's going to be trickier to manage that. But I think if you can get that flexibility in, especially now that people are becoming used to that, and there's a lot of talk of, is it going to continue in the future? Then people do start needing to think about that. Definitely. I'm sure Katrina will be back in a second. But I think it's really valuable, Jane, because you're right? That kind of choice for an employee, I think that kind of dial between kind of what is given and set, and actually what the employee can choose, that's shifting slightly now with kind of the COVID, et cetera, simply because we're proving that certain things can be done. Yes, it's putting a lot of pressure on maybe IT systems. And as you said, there might well be an increased cost for companies based on, realigning this. So if somebody consistently wants to work from home, now you've got to be thinking about, okay, how do I strip the cost out of the business if they were sitting in an office compared to how can I fund them, basically sitting at home. But that's the one thing I'm really hoping for. The other side of this is that we've experienced different ways of working that can work. So the old kind of classic of, if you're working from home, you've got kids, you could get distracted. Well, that's nonsense really now, because millions of people have proved that can work, that could be coped with at differing degrees of success, right? But actually it's proving that we can do this. And what a great time for businesses to rethink their onboarding, pre-boarding, onboarding, and learning and development in terms of how they offer that to their employees. So, to your point around a survey, would you kind of maybe suggest, okay, everybody, we're starting to think about that return to the office. Should we start by really re-engaging our people and asking these questions? And if so, kind of how would you approach that? In person, online, what would your recommendation be? For whether they would want to be trained remotely or just work remotely generally?
Yeah. Work remotely,
how they want to work going forward.
Opening up that conversation.
Yeah. I think if it was me doing it, and I was kind of at that management level of owning that, the first thing I would do is have a look at what the role is, and can we offer that remotely? Before you start asking them what they want, can we give it to them if they say yes? Let's start with that, and then giving people the choice. Can you work from home? Where are you more productive? Probably online, I would imagine, because everything's got to be online now anyway, hasn't it? It'd be difficult.
Well, unless the internet goes down in the middle of the show and you suddenly disappear, like for quite a considerable period of time.
you did, yeah. All you missed was me kind of waffling on, to be fair, Katrina, and Jen being very patient and listening to me.
It is. And I think it's important to remember.
I have the main thing. So if it went on long enough, I couldn't end the show. But the funny thing is that you two are still there. I could see on my phone, which was on 4G, that you were still. Very interesting technology. So yeah. Oh, this is interesting.
I think the important thing to remember on that
comment come out. Me running my own company, I go crazy sitting at the house all the time. Feels like I'm in prison. I like my freedom.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
not much you can say to that.
I mean, I felt a bit like that today, to be honest. I was like, God, let me get back to work. I do like to be on. I don't have offices, but when I'm at work, I'm on a client site usually. So I'm in that office environment, which I do like. It's nice to be away from home life. And let's remember, we're not really working from home like we would normally be. we're probably not being as productive as we would usually choose to be, depending on your situation. When you've got the kids to homeschool and you've got, or it might be you're being overly productive and you're close to burnout because there's no boundary, is there? When does work end and home start?
Actually, I was having a conversation with a friend about that this morning, and she runs her own business and has kids. And I find it quite appalling that parents are actually having to homeschool because none of you have got education degrees. So why do you think that you can do that? Like, why do you think you actually can?
We haven't done any today.
Then there's like all of this stress of I'm not being a good, well, of course you're not, because you haven't got years of training on how to. So I'm not surprised, but I agree with the boundary setting as well. And actually that kind of in a way goes to this, doesn't it? Where do all the boundaries go? But I have a clear routine because I've been working at home for so long, like a decade. I walk the dog, I get my cup of coffee, I start my day, and I end at 6:30, and I end then. I make sure that is the latest I ever work, and I think it's really important. And then I walk our way. I think.
See, I'm guilty of that. I'm guilty of not having the boundaries because I'll often try and do the homeschooling and fail miserably at that, but try and do the homeschooling.
I think people are being guilted into it at the moment, unfortunately.
You don't want to do it and the kids don't want to do it, you just feel like you should. So I'm doing that, and then the kids are in bed and I'm doing my work then. So it's and you think, I'm being really flexible and I'm adapting and it's great, but it's really, I just want them back at school so I can get on with my normal core hours.
Can we bring up Greg and then Joanna's comments, because it links back to what we were just chatting about.
Sure.
In terms of,
I was off running around trying to get the Wi-Fi to work. Greg McCora, whose name now is showing, so it was worth me getting booted off. I think it depends on the size of the company. We have 1,400 people, so we surveyed their sentiment on the topic and then encouraged managers to have those conversations.
Great.
What was those conversations? I missed that, of course. And this one? Was it this one?
Yeah, Joanna's,
we poked our company, nearly 80% want to be back in the office in some way. All wanted some work from home, though. We poked. Is that like a Facebook poke? It sounds painful. No?
Yeah, they want the option, don't they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's the
key. That's important. Back to choice. So,
I wouldn't much rather work remotely.
Any predictions for the second half of this year when it comes to kind of L&D? Any things that you're seeing that you kind of think, okay, this is different, either technology or approach or anything along those lines? Bang in with a curveball comment there. Let's go.
Can I just point this out? Joanna's ass not poked. Sorry. Cute. I prefer poked. We poked our employees. I love it. Let's poke them.
Yeah. Anything you're seeing that you... Go on, Jen, sorry.
Tech at the minute is really at the heart of the learning ecosystem. Everything has to be tech. It's just the way it's got to be, which is what I was saying earlier. Like it or not, ready for it or not, this is where we are with it. So I think that for me, if I had to make a prediction, that will only grow as people are becoming used to it. It's almost like they've been pushed to take that first step into it. So now they're doing it. They can see the benefits. I mean, there's loads of benefits of virtual L&D anyway. There's a wider geographical reach. What I do think will happen though, Glenn, actually now that I'm thinking about it, is because there's that wider geographical reach, you can have people from all over the world, teams from all over on your training. That also means that for leaders, it's global leadership, which is very different from local leadership, where you've got people in your office. You're now having to manage people all over the place. So that will be a development, I think, later in the year. And I think the tech will fly as well. You might go into even maybe like VR, virtual reality side of things. At the minute, we're at the Zoom and Teams level, but I do think that'll grow.
Oh, that certainly happens.
Awesome.
They use that in Australia, like down the mines and stuff, to show what it's really like. Rex adds a comment here. I think that organisations should invest in the employees' connectivity, which is similar to what you're saying, isn't it? Keeping them connected, reducing FOMO as well, which is quite true. And then lots of laughs. I still like the poked.
The poked is certainly the comment of the day.
Going forward. No, absolutely. Got to be done. And actually, I think also the other thing that will come out of this with all of us working remotely, not just from the training and what you alluded to with the global leadership. When I was talking to Erin earlier, she was talking about spending time working in Germany, and like by leaving the United States, it gave her the understanding of how diverse Europe is from it. for example. But I think our borders are going to reduce even more, because we're like, well, okay, we've managed this just fine. So actually now we can just really have remote teams. We don't have to have remote teams in offices. We can just have people where they are. I think that could happen.
Yeah.
You guys, when you nod, you're like, oh God, what's she getting at? I get scared I've lost the internet again. It's quite funny. I'm having more paranoia this afternoon than normal. I need you to keep grunting or something. So.
Say something. Anything.
Anything. I'm dreadful. Sorry. So I think there's a lot of interesting things coming out of this. Actually, because one of the other random things, you know, this ability to see inside people's homes and discover more about them. Like you
don't ask to see my home.
No. Well, actually, if Erin's still on, she'll know I've turned sideways because I don't show the mess that's that way. However, I've also discovered that my beautiful friend Simon Heath, who's incredibly talented and was one of my first speakers at Disrupt HR London, along with another one, Amanda Arrowsmith. Amanda's been making these for the NHS and charity, and I love it. So it's got his art on it, and she's sewn it, and I finally managed to get my hands on one. So I'm loving that. I'm loving seeing how creative people are. And this whole sourdough thing has me completely fascinated. So I feel like we're getting to know people better.
Greg's just come in with a final comment that's wraps up on your comment there, which I think is really, really cool. Is the job location dead?
Greg, don't ask me. I've been working remote for 10.5 years. Yes.
Yeah. Yes. But linked to that, which I was chatting to somebody yesterday, day before. If remote working is going to become the norm, what does that mean for salaries?
Oh.
You know, I mean, is there a kind of recalibration in terms of salaries? Because I mean, London weighted wages have gone a long time ago, right? But people are still building in, you know, kind of costs in terms of travel, et cetera, into their expectation around base salaries. Does that mean that there might be a recalibration in the kind of base salary conversation? I'm not saying there is. I'm just throwing it out there to see your thoughts.
You also almost have to pay for country economy. So, like, you know, 50 quid here, which is 65 US, is nothing for us. But yeah, you know, if that is in India or somewhere in Asia, that's so outrageously expensive. So you kind of have to calibrate for the locals so they can afford to live.
Yeah. And thanks to Lewis for bringing that one up. That was a really, really interesting one that we were kind of chatting about. Anyway, I digress.
As well about whether they, you know, so like the other benefits you get. I mean, I have been out of this world for many years now, since 2010. I haven't been employed with a pay slip for so long. But you know, if you get a company car allowance, but you can't travel anywhere, you know, that you don't need to go to the site. How does that then translate into your salary?
Let's not go into
well, equally as well.
I don't know.
No.
But could
my God, you're right.
Could the standard question from potential employees be, what's your kind of working from home benefit and budget? So do you advocate 100% working from home? And with that, do you actually allocate a budget with it? Because now it's not like, you can work from home and you can take your work laptop and stuff like that. It's now actually, I'm working from home. It's a serious consideration. How are you going to fund that? As a new employee, you can offer me some, you know, budget to set myself up in terms of, you know, home working.
Companies are doing that though already.
Yeah, they are. But it's not consistently considered, is it? Whereas post-COVID, it might be something that generally is on the table.
Well, if they're going to spend that much setting them in an office anyway, they could at least spend that much setting them in an office at home. What's this? Sorry, I completely didn't give Jen the opportunity to answer that. Our companies have had remote pay separate from on-site for domestic and UK.
Nice.
Sorry, Jen, I didn't even give you an opportunity to answer that. I so rudely dived in.
That's all right. I feel like I answered it anyway. And we're talking about, you know, benefits and working from home. Like you say, you know, people are. So I've got my guys, for instance, are set up working from home with a company laptop, Rise Learning Group's laptop, but they've got it. And you know, it'll be the same with a lot of companies. And I think that'll be something that they'll have to all consider on, you know, an individual basis. So
No, because I mean, we get a deduction, don't we, through our limited companies. So I know a portion of my rent and my expenses for electricity and phone all get covered. So that's, here we go. Joanna Barker is back. Oh, there's no poked in this one. Salary. So many times at offer stage, people, mostly women, say, I'll drop salary for work from home days. Really feel this won't be a conversation we have to have. Yes.
Yes.
Not quite as funny as
why you would have to. That's something I feel quite strongly about. Actually, you shouldn't be sacrificing your salary. Your work isn't devalued because you're working from home. If anything, you might be more productive. So I want to rise.
Okay. And
100% agree
again. 100%. Still coming up as a LinkedIn user. I think salaries would still consider market rates in region, but it does cause to stop and ask, how can you put a price on physical attendance in an office versus working from home? We're leaving this show with more questions than answers.
And actually, you know what, though? I think here, where the danger is with this, is you go into the territory of, if there's a difference in salary for if you're working from home or if you're in the office, at the minute there's this stigma in a lot of companies where if you're the one in the office, then you are the worker there who is, you're making the sacrifice and you're going in, and it's kind of frowned upon a bit for the ones working from home. Not at the minute, obviously, because you've got to work from home, but just before all this kicked off, then if you work from home, you were almost scared to say, I'm working from home on Friday, because people go, why?
I get more done in 4 hours at home on my own than I would ever have got done in 13 hours sitting in the office. And actually, I was talking to someone about that. He was working 13-hour days, commuting 1.5 hours each way, and I worked out he was getting no sleep. Like, how much sleep were you getting? He spent 2 months sleeping after that ended. And I'm going, I put money on it. You would get more done in 4 hours if you just were allowed to work a normal day, so that you didn't have that exhaustion. Like, it's presenteeism. Anyway, we've gone way off topic.
I know.
Yeah, but that's one of the beauties of, this is one of the things that I think will come out post-COVID, is that stigmatism of the remote worker, or, remote access, that sort of thing. That will disappear now, because everybody has been doing that. And like you said, that shouldn't be devalued at all. You shouldn't have to sacrifice the salary expectation you've got because you want to work from home. No way, man. No.
But I think that will take. So I get that now. So I if I was allowed to go and attend an event and speak, I would be paid to speak, but then it's online and they don't expect to pay me for the same time and preparation time and my same expertise. So, and it's like,
and this stigmatism, it would appear, seems to impact, well, Sarah's saying
Sarah,
there, and
I have women say to me, I would take a lower salary if I can have flexibility. It frustrates me so much. Well, then I guess we need to have more of a band of girl power and stop that.
Yeah, it should be a stipulation. I will accept this job on the basis that you're flexible, rather than the sacrifice that you're making. Yeah.
Agree with Greg. He's just come back in 100%. It shouldn't even be a conversation that people should have at kind of office stage at all. Nice one, Greg.
Charge them rent to occupy your space. Very well put.
Smart.
That's a really interesting way. I like that. Because actually the costs are quite high when you start looking at them. Actually, back up here. I've lost Joe Shree's comment at this point about the electricity and all of that. That can be really high, depending on what country you're in as well. So I delivered a webinar for Nigeria. They were spending a hell of a lot of data, like cost of data, to listen to it for 45 minutes. So we went right off topic, but it was awesome. Jennifer Tait, otherwise known as Jen Tait, if you're Glenn Martin. Where can people find you? How can we find you, other than obviously LinkedIn? But you
obviously LinkedIn, I am on LinkedIn. We've also got a Rise Learning Group company page on LinkedIn that you can follow. If anyone wanted to talk about onboarding and their challenges, I'm doing loads of work on it at the minute. So the way I see it is, rather than us all trying to solve the same problem, let's solve it once and share it. So if anybody wants to talk about onboarding, then just drop a yes in the comments, or you can email me at jen.tait@riselearninggroup.com.
jen.tait@riselearninggroup.com.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Okay, that wasn't bad for the second time. Oh, sorry. Glenn's out there. Thanks for the. Oh, Lewis, what question? Was there a question from Lewis? Did I miss it?
Yeah, that was he posed the question around the sort of salary recalibration. We were chatting about it the other day, and I just thought it was such an interesting question to sort of bring it into this forum as well, just sort of see what people thought.
We need to get like a HRD on, don't we, who deals with that as well, because I think we're a bit removed. Definitely. Next week, however, we have Mark Hopkins, and Mark has run his own engineering recruitment agency for many years, and he is going to come and say what it's actually like to run a recruitment agency, because I know a lot of people, because having set my own business up in the middle of a recession, will look to do that in the coming months and weeks ahead. So it'd be actually quite nice to get some like down to earth chat about what to expect as well doing that. So that's coming up next week. What else do I have to say? I have to thank Enterprise Alumni again, and truly the show wouldn't be alive without them, so we cannot thank them enough. They have a brilliant product as well to keep your alumni happy after you've offboarded them. We've talked about Jen, thank you so much, and thank you, my God, for so many comments. I'm loving that I can pull LinkedIn ones in comments as well.
Jen, you've been amazing. Thank you.
Thank you. Really, Thanks so much for having me on the show.
You coped with us going off to wherever we went off to as well. Wrong direction. I'm not sure we ever answered the debate, but I just think everyone's involved. So just as long as the humans first.
Yeah, that's it. And thanks so much for having me. I've had a great time chatting. Could talk about this all day. So
yeah, completely. We shall be back Friday next week at 10 a.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. UK time. I nearly did it. Glenn was going to tell me off. Particularly when Jen's up north. I'll be even more trouble if I say London time, won't I? UK. Yeah. Anyway, thank you. We shall see you all next week. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Take care. Bye.